All right, let's do this again. Okay, I think I got it.
Is working?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry about that. Now we can get started for real. All right, guys, we're going to get started today. Sorry about that delay. Welcome. We are actually streaming on multiple platforms, so we're going to get started for many people's questions on what to expect with the Trump administration and where do we go from here and what can be done, if anything. So if you have any questions, please put it in the comments. And I just need a thumbs up if everybody can hear me and it's clear. If you guys can give me a thumbs up. Okay. Hey, Luis, thank you. All right. So I know this has been heavy on so many people's minds. So what we want to talk about is what can we really expect to be happening over the next 4 years? What does that look like? And what has happened in the past, right? So I have been practicing. My name is Naif Mubarak. If you don't know me, I founder of Mubarak Law. I've been practicing for over 15 years, and we specialize in immigration, and we have survived one Trump presidency in the past, and we very much intend to do so again in the future with so many approvals. Yes, is it going to be harder? Is it going to be more difficult? But let's talk about the changes we plan on seeing. So in the past, I promise you, the first day we'll see countless executive orders flying out the window from the Trump administration and President Trump, because executive orders are what we call low-hanging fruit. That is an easy target or an easy way for him to make immediate changes on immigration policy. What are some of the things from executive orders or that can come from an executive order? Temporary protected status, Biden's parole in place program, that program was already canceled. The parole program we had for Cuba, Venezuela, those specific countries, probably going to go out the window. Now, for temporary protected status, we've seen them try to end it before, and how it had all sorts of an effect on our community, especially in Florida. We have probably one of the largest Venezuelan and Haitian communities across the country, and many of these individuals do have temporary protected status. And so if it ends, the issue what we're going to have here is many people won't have the right to renew their work permits or travel documents. And TPS was a safety net for many people who are going through an immigration process or who have an outstanding order of removal. So that's what I think is one of the first initial changes that's going to happen. Now, additionally, we're going to expect delays, guys. There's going to be delays. There is already a hiring freeze that they have announced that will take place. So what does that mean in Orlando is when we have immigration judges with, a backlog of several years where judges are giving trial dates out in 2026, we can think that this might even cause even more delays. However, we'll see what those changes come in place. Now, when we talk about immigration court, that's EOIR. Quick recap, that's different than USCIS. So court is EOIR, USCIS is for applications like benefits, green card marriages, citizenship, these types of things. So it's important that when I reference these things, you guys keep track. So with the court, we expect to see what's called an end to prosecutorial discretion. If usually right now, if we have a case where we believe has favorable facts, we can reach out to the government or the OPLA attorney and say, hey, is there a way to dismiss this case? They have other forms of relief pending with USCIS. Do we need to really continue with the immigration court case? And right now they have authority under a prosecutorial discretion memo. So it's quite possible that this memo will go away, and then these other side or the DHS attorneys will no longer have the authority from their superiors to agree to dismissal, meaning many cases will go to hearings. There will not be any consideration if there are pending removals or options for an individual in the future. Now, this is disappointing because this is a great tool for the courts, for the government to kind of prioritize who they're focusing on, whether it's criminals or an undocumented family. Now, we did see in that leaked Trump immigration plan in 2025 and whatever else has been leaked, saying that they're going to focus on criminals. However, under the Trump administration in the past, there wasn't really any difference as far as court process and proceedings. There wasn't discretion. There wasn't the opportunity to get a case dismissed, for example. So that's another thing that I expect to happen. Now, if you're an immigration lawyer who's practicing for the first time, I know, and even my clients, and if you're a client or you're thinking about starting the process, I will say this, is it going to be more difficult? Sure. Right? Is it things going to be challenged? Yes. But it's not going to be a complete stop for many of you, or a complete stop for many cases. We had hundreds of cases approved during the Trump administration in the past. It will be able to do so again. Now, it does seem to be a little bit more aggressive, so I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot predict exactly what's going to happen, but we do have their, leaked memorandum, and we do have past experience. So what all that means is you can expect your case to be challenged, but many people who are legally eligible, right? If you're going through a marriage case and your marriage is bona fide, yes, will we get requests for evidence? Sure, but we will still be able to overcome that in most cases. So it's devastating for people who have removal orders, who are in proceedings and are waiting for another form of relief and temporary protected status, because many of the ways we resolve their situation is through some type of collaboration with the other side, of an understanding that this is going to need additional time. So if it's contested and we can't get additional time on a court hearing, then that might be problematic for a client's case where we're just a couple months away from getting a green card for a wife. For example, the Cuban Adjustment Act. Sometimes you have to wait a year before you qualify for a green card. Well, if the government's not willing to postpone a case, we just had a case last week where we got postponed. If that postponement didn't happen, then that client would have likely gotten a deportation, and in 6 months, his wife would have been a green card. So we were able to argue today that give us a continuance, work with us, because we have a solution down the road. That's what prosecutorial discretion is, and I think that will go away definitely. Now, we also saw in the past travel bans, Muslim bans, where they just stopped altogether processing visas for individuals of certain nationalities. We saw that being contested in the courts, and a lot of times they were around for several years, for Syria, for example. I haven't heard much about these travel bans coming back, but I do think that with this administration and what's happening in many regions, especially with students and protesters, it might be very possible that travel bans or other memorandum is issued preventing individuals from coming in from certain countries. So when we talk about the delays, we're also going to see these delays at the consular level. And for those who don't know, consular means you're processing your visa abroad, let's say at an embassy in Cairo or U.S. consulate in Jordan, Amman. We saw very much delays there. So I know it sounds like doom and gloom, and I don't have too much positive news to say about it, because if you are going through the immigration process, this typically means, bad news in the sense of how long your case is going to take. So that's one of the things we talked about, was delays. And for, again, new lawyers, we have seen in the past that Department of Homeland Security will issue memos on a Friday evening, like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. on a Friday, changing the policy starting Monday. So if you filed something Friday afternoon, it's very possible it could be rejected the following week, and then you would have to refile it based on their guidelines. So that's another change, or another thing that I saw in the past that I think it's important that people remember. with people who have TPS and, these people that I called low hanging fruit, that's who I do think is going to be most impacted. DACA, TPS, people in removal proceedings. So what you can do now is speak with an immigration attorney, right? You create a case plan of what can be done, what cannot be done. This way, you and your family or whoever you're concerned about are ready for worst case scenario. You have, if there's an undocumented individual that you're worried about, you need to have proof of this person's time in the United States, their biographics. You should have an emergency file of sorts of all of their documentation. God forbid they're ever in a situation where they cannot get those documents themselves, and those documents would be needed for forms of relief. So for your people who are nervous and anxious, you need to consult with an attorney. If you have an attorney, trust with your attorney, take the time to listen to what they are telling you and what's to come. There's not many things we can do except adapt to the policy changes that are happening. So try not to read too much on the internet, or even when the policy is released, there will be challenges from immigration attorneys, from ACLU. If we believe something violates due process, some of these memorandums and immigration policies will be challenged. So sometimes it can be several months, if not years, before we know if a Trump policy is going to take effect. Again, that's not the case for people like DACA or TPS. They're going to try, I'm sure we'll see that on day one be affected. So I'm going to see here if there's any kind of questions or comments. Do you have some? Okay. All right, just some comments. Thank you, Athman. Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. Nice to see you. My mom's giving me thumbs up. Anybody have any questions for me about what to expect or where do we go from here? To recap, executive orders will happen on the first day. We think that's going to affect people in parole. The southern border, asylum applications, definitely much more complex. We're going to see it get more and more difficult. Already there's a less than 10% approval rate from the southern border and asylum. So we'll see the return of people waiting in Mexico for their asylum cases. But for those who are already U.S. citizens and people who already have green cards, you should be the least worried all of this because of the fact that you already obtained your status lawfully. You should not have any issues. Now, if you have a green card, you should not be traveling with criminal history. If you have questions or can't remember the validity of how you got that green card, please speak with an immigration lawyer before you file for citizenship. We have a question here. Any problems entering the country with approved advance parole? You shouldn't have any issues with traveling with approved advance parole. However, if you see on the bottom of your approved advance parole notification, it will tell you that there's no guarantee on reentry. I will tell you that I've never had an issue with my clients coming back. They've always been able to come back, but there's never a guarantee. But that's a good question, and it leads me to something that I want to make sure is clear. If you're a student visa, if you are traveling with a pending adjustment of status case, if you have any type of complex case, I really would prefer for you not to travel during the first few weeks of the administration. That's where we saw those travel bans come in. That's where we saw people stuck in the airport. There was all sorts of things. So if there is not an emergent need to travel and you're a student or here on an F1 visa, I would think twice about unnecessary travel. You should be in your semesters anyways, but I would think twice about that. We have a question. Will there be delays in process applying for my wife? Yeah, so right now, processing for a spouse can take anywhere from 1.5 to 2 years. I do expect that number to go up for that processing time, just because historically with this administration, that's what they want to do, is slow down the process, slow down the immigration to the United States. So it's currently a year and a half, 2 years. And we start to, how can they slow this down? You start to get requests for evidence, more so than we would see in the past for cases that we believed were solid. You start to get questions at the consulate and the embassy while you're being processed. So these are things to look forward to that might be affecting your delay on your case. Another question, will it be harder to obtain I-140 based labor certification under the new administration? This administration wants to protect American workers. Most perm processes do just that, where they advertise the job position, you must fill it. Again, across the board, I just think we can expect more pushback on every requirement. There was President-elect Trump saying possibility of a new immigration law, and that's quite possible that that will happen because of the fact that the Republicans will control both the House and the Senate, and there might be a new bill, and we would all have a new immigration law. And there he alluded to, for example, students who graduate from the U.S. possibly getting green cards. Now, I'm not sure how that will play out, if that's actually going to be happening. Again, that's something that we'll have to wait and see. But in general, whether it's a work permit or a work processing application, immigrant visa like perm, or a spouse, I can anticipate delays for sure. We have another question. I just filed my 751. Again, 751s, green card, marriages, all these types of cases, as long as your case is legitimate and strong, I still anticipate to win cases like that all the time. I just expect it to require a little bit more work and a little bit more time. So you shouldn't have anything to worry about if you meet the requirements on that. And that's my opinion on that matter. Now, we talked about people with green cards and citizenship, and you hear things on the news talking about denaturalization. They're going to go after people. Denaturalization is the process of, taking away or denaturalizing somebody's citizenship if they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt, the criminal standard, that the citizenship was received or obtained by mistake or misrepresentation. From 1990 to 2017, there was only like 11 to 12 of these cases processed on average a year. I think the denaturalization is a lot of, political puffering. I also think it might be used as a way to go after certain people. However, the standard is very high to prove that somebody should not have received the naturalization or the approval on their citizenship. But it is something he's promising to do, and hiring people to do, and increasing the budgets to have larger fraud divisions within USCIS and to go after that, those focuses. So that's something that we anticipate that will happen with the new administration. So thanks, guys, for those questions. I know it's easy for me to geek out and ramble. So if there's something that wasn't clear, I'm happy to revisit that and answer your questions again. Also, you're always welcome to send us a DM or a message, and we'll be happily able to do a specific video to answer a question. Thank you for always updating us. Thank you, Jessica. And then here we have a question. My father-in-law was given a notice of denial. Should I apply from start, or can I appeal since my wife is a U.S. citizen? I'm not sure what was denied, so we would need a little bit of information. I also want to remind everybody that this is public. We're live streaming. Please do not provide personal information. You don't want to ask questions publicly if you're not comfortable doing so. But I'm not sure what your notice of denial is for your father-in-law. I don't know what type of form it was. If it's like a I-130 or an application for a green card, we can look at that. So we have another question. My parents entered the U.S. on a B-2 visa, and I want to apply for a green card for them. Should they be concerned about the application process under the new administration? Okay, so as a US citizen, we have certain immediate relatives, right? Mom and dad, unmarried children under 21, and spouse. Any of these people who are what's considered immediate relatives by USCIS, they can adjust status from a US citizen petition spouse or relative as long as they entered lawfully. So since your parents entered on a B1, B2, they would be able to adjust in theory without any issues. Now, what's likely to happen is there will be maybe restrictions on how soon somebody can apply after entering the United States. Like you shouldn't enter on a B1, B2 and then file for the green card the next day. The USCIS can very easily state that you committed visa fraud by entering as a tourist and then adjusting. Now, currently, that's not a really enforced rule, and that has nothing to do with Trump. That rule has been around, but that's something that we want to keep our eyes on to see how that's going to change. Can I travel while waiting on an I-751 with an extension letter? Yes. 751 is an extension. It gives it for like 48 months. It says so on the receipt. You travel with that document, your expired green card, assuming nothing else has changed. Now, anybody with criminal history and green cards do not travel. Okay. Have you submitted VAWA applications? Yeah, we do VAWAs all the time. Thank you, Jessica, for that question. We do VAWAs all the time. VAWAs, for those who don't know, is the Violence Against Women's Act, but it's not just for women. It's for children. It's for husbands. It's for wives. Anybody who's been a victim of abuse by their spouse in the United States. So that is what the VAWA is for. And that's what we submit in our office. And we have a very high success rate with those types of cases. And it is, sad to see. Now, there was an announcement a couple of days ago from USCIS under the Biden administration that starting this December 2024, we will start possibly seeing many interviews for people who are going through the VAWA process. This is because of rampant fraud under the VAWA divisions. So before you file for VAWA, we do see a lot of people on social media saying, is your ex mean to you? Is it this? Is it this? File for VAWA. So there's a lot more requirements to it, and not everybody qualifies for it. Matthew, you are the best. You are the reason I have an amazing life in this great. Oh, thank you. That's really nice of you to say. Thanks, Matt. Any other questions about VAWA, about processes? We'll hope to try to keep you guys updated. Now, I did talk about citizenship, and I want to circle back to who you can sponsor. I said your parents, your spouses, unmarried children, those are immediate relatives, meaning there's no visa wait times for them. The married children and brothers and sisters or children over 21 go into a different category where you have to wait for the visa to be available for them. So what we do hear President Trump and a lot of people talking about is chain migration, kind of like he did for Melania, right? Sponsored her parents, chain migration of families. We keep hearing rumors that chain migration is something he wants to end, right? So I think, brothers and sister petitions, that might be something they might want to target, maybe take away from the rights of U.S. citizens. That's not like in the Constitution to be able to sponsor your brothers and sisters. So that might be something that can be easily changed if they are going to change the law. So something to look out for. If you've been thinking about filing for your brother or sister and you're like, it's taking too long, 14, 15 years, I would just remind everybody that my parents came to this country from Palestine in 1975. They didn't want to do it for brothers and sisters just because of the wait time. It was like 5 to 10 years. But here you are. Many of you live long lives. And what's nice about brothers and sisters petitions is that it will include their spouses and children. So while you can and while you are able, and God forbid the law changes, I would suggest filing for your sibling petitions now, if that's something you've been on the fence about. If you have questions about it, it's Form I-130. Some people do it on their own. Some people choose to hire us. It's a straightforward process. We did start this and kind of hang up and start. So sorry about the technical difficulties, but I'm very happy now that it worked out great. If anybody has any other questions for me, we'll wrap up. As far as our office goes, we have been really busy, of course, reassuring our clients with the changes. We can only be prepared, right? We can only put the best cases forward, which is why I'm not too concerned. We've already been through this for many, many people. And in our office, when we submit a marriage case, we're submitting a very solid case. It's not just a marriage certificate and photos. So for any of our clients who know, I can be annoying, our case managers can be annoying, constantly asking you for questions. So we're kind of already in a state of preparing cases really, really well so that we can avoid any issues. But we will promise to stay on top of the news. There's going to be updates every day, probably for the first few months. And we will send out our newsletters. We will do these lives, everything possible to try to limit your anxiety. All we can do is control the options in front of us. So try not to be too anxious. And on the 15th of every month, I will send out a video or do a quick live just to do like a 15-second update. And what I mean by that, like, for example, VAWA now has an interview. I'll explain that to you in 15 seconds or less. Try to keep everybody up to speed while we handle your cases. And, you know, we're doing great over here. We have a really good track record. And I'm not too worried. We'll continue to fight for you guys. So if there's not any more other questions, I'm going to wrap this up. Give it another second, see if there's another last minute question. Otherwise, I want to wish everybody an awesome Friday. I'm looking forward to attending my alma mater, UCF, Go Knights. Moroccan Student Association is having a dinner tonight, and we will be in attendance, my office, and supporting. If you have any events at your university, your church, or your mosque that you would like us to be participating in or sponsoring, please let me know. And on that note, I wish everybody a happy Friday, and we'll see you guys soon. If you have any questions, DM. If you think anybody would benefit from this video, please share that video with them, and we look forward to speaking to you all in the near future. Have a good day.